This month on In the Life.
The two things that I always put out on the table is one, that I'm Puerto Rican, and the second thing is that I'm gay.
I became a writer out of necessity just to give myself the opportunity to act.
Oh dear. Does that make me a lesbian?
I've believed in God ever since I was little. I think it's cool being a Christian, yeah.
All this and more on America's gay and lesbian news magazine, In the Life. Funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by the Ford Foundation, the Pride Foundation, Michael A. Lepin, and these funders. And the annual support of In the Life members like you. Good evening. I'm Kate Clinton, and I'm especially excited to be back at In the Life to celebrate June Pride. Tonight's program features three remarkable members of the LGBT community: a young doctor, a veteran actor, and a high school student, each of whom is making unique contributions to social activism. Our first story takes us to New York's renowned Albert Einstein College of Medicine, where you'll meet someone who's about to graduate, John Paul Sanchez, known as JP. With his skill and drive, JP could succeed anywhere, but his dream is to stay right where he is to serve a community in need, the community he grew up in, the Bronx.
Sometimes you don't know of everything that's around you until life takes you there. I think I've, traveled a lot and made a lot of great strides, but in terms of proximity, I haven't gone very far. It's all like in a 1 mile radius. Down there is where I grew up. It's where I lived for, 25 years. This is Jacoby Medical Center, which is a city hospital, and it has the best emergency medicine program in the Northeast. And what makes it interesting is, because it's a city hospital, you get a lot of the disenfranchised, marginalized communities that private hospitals don't see. I'm a medical student, I do research. The two things that I always put out on the table is one, that I'm Puerto Rican, and that I grew up in the Bronx, right? Puerto Rican from the Bronx, so really stay away from putting down Latinos or Bronx folk. And the second thing is that I'm gay. What's the big deal? We're gonna have gay patients, we're gonna have lesbian patients, and we're gonna have transgender patients, we're gonna have Latino patients, we're gonna have poor patients. So to say that I need to be quiet about my identity makes me think, what are you asking your patients to be quiet about? And once you start censoring your patients, well, they start believing that maybe they shouldn't tell you about their drug history or their sexual history or any psychiatric problems. So it's a very dangerous game, I think, to believe. And it's one that I don't want to embark on my patients. You want me to sit you up a little bit, or are you comfortable? Are you comfortable? You're comfortable? I'm just going to feel your abdomen, and then I'm going to have you sit up, okay? I want to create the most comfortable situation possible. Any pain or discomfort? Besides the verbal communication, it's also just helping put a person at ease. Like, we know the power of touch, body language. Okay, now I'm just gonna press deeper. And it really does work. I mean, when you come in, hold a person's hand, put your hand on their shoulder, listen to them, they calm down. That's the most important thing for me, because that's gonna allow us to communicate effectively, and for me to really figure out why this person is here. How many times have you been to the emergency room in the past year for this?
Oh, let me see. Maybe about 4 times.
4 times? Mm-hmm. Okay. Growing up in the Bronx, I was really fascinated by the HIV/AIDS epidemic because it really hit the Bronx hard. It was affecting families. Like either parents were infected, and it was like devastating the lives of their children, or it was also affecting the extended families. And then not only for the individual and their nuclear family, but also how it affects the community. For me, it was, why is it that HIV/AIDS is so disproportionately affecting the gay community, the Latino community, or the poor? Why these communities instead of everyone? And it frightened me to the point that it raised like this curiosity. I think that's what drew me to medicine. Mr. Alba, right? Okay, good to meet you. My name is JP Sanchez. I'm one of the medical students here. So what brought you in today?
Really, my major is that I get epileptic seizures.
Okay. And why were you here a few days ago?
It was because of the same thing.
Same thing?
But it wasn't as strong as today. You know, today, that's why today I felt it. That's why I was a little, so scared today. Because it was too much. It was, I was seeing double, seeing double, too much. But my nerves is a little more.
All right, so you've been shaking more. Nothing else?
I got bipolar disorder also.
Okay.
Bipolar disorder.
All right. I want to help the Bronx be a healthier place.
Does it hurt?
You start realizing, well, damn, people in the Bronx deal with everything. In one sense, it's great to practice here and to do research because, whether it's HIV/AIDS or if it's asthma or diabetes, you have a huge group of people that are suffering that you can work with. And that's why I'm always raving about the Bronx, and that, other people just consider it a mess. I just consider it as the perfect place to learn. I never got jumped in the Bronx. I never got beat up in the Bronx. I never got robbed in the Bronx. It's had a bad mystique, but I can't imagine raising a family anywhere else.
Remember when you used to live over here, John?
Yeah,
you
I
came
know, I
here
grew
when
up
you
here.
were about 4 years old.
So my uncle lived in the basement. My grandparents lived on the middle floor, and then my aunt and uncle lived on the third floor with their kids. So there was like 5 families, all the of all of our family
Yeah.
living here.
He lived here, and his grandparents used to live next door.
We could go around the block to the. She's the caring, supportive Latina mother, and I feel like a lot of my good communication skills with my patients stems from what my mom taught me of how you should treat other people, how you communicate with them, put them at ease. That's my mother. They used to tell me, they're like, oh, if you come home with a C, you are never going out, so you better do your homework. And I think something just clicked.
It was tough to find out that my son was gay. I cry, I still get emotional, but I love my son so much, unconditional, that I decided that if I didn't support him in this situation that he was in, who else would help him?
To be totally honest, I think growing up Puerto Rican in the neighborhood was harder than being gay. When you're gay, it's easy to mask your identity. You don't talk about it, but when you have a last name Sanchez, or if you have certain features or certain family traits or certain cultural activities, people know you're Puerto Rican. And I think, my family raised me to be very proud of being Puerto Rican. So, I was the one of 2 Latino students in the school. It was a predominantly Irish and Italian neighborhood, and I was the sort of Italian, non-Irish student, and that was hard.
So you can follow for Dr. Spiegel, and I think I want to welcome and thank everyone coming today for the first Minority Research Social. A lot of the time we focus so much on our clinical work that we don't get to highlight some of the great research that the institution is doing. And that
There's just not that many Black and Latino medical providers who also do research. It's important that we don't just say to the students, oh, you have to attain these skills on your own. What we do is we start developing an infrastructure or forum to give them the support.
Are well known. You get a better residency. There's a lot of sort of professional admiration, and you feel like you're playing a complete role in sort of the medical arena.
When I went to the top and there was a lot of transgender patients there, I was like, wow. You know, it's just very interesting.
The other thing I'm very proud of is this organization called the Bronx Lesbian and Gay Health Resource Consortium.
Fantastic question, because we're really
Recently, we started dealing with syphilis because syphilis over the past 5 years has been increasing. It's a marker for unsafe sexual behavior. So if you see an increase in syphilis, you're also concerned that HIV infection rates are increasing. And as we know, HIV infection new cases have been predominantly amongst young Black and Latino men who have sex with men. So tonight, basically what we're going to is an event that's going to be held at a gay club, and we're doing a comprehensive health service event.
Hepatitis B. Right. Hepatitis A is 2 shots. Hepatitis B is 3.
Oh, probably boss 8. Can I borrow a quarter?
Why?
So I can call my mom and tell her that I found the man in my dream.
Ah, he has all the corny lines. All right, you know, it'd be really impressive if you get tested. Because then I know you're taking care of yourself.
What we're offering tonight is comprehensive health services in one site. So besides HIV/AIDS testing, we do syphilis testing, urine-based gonorrhea and chlamydia testing, blood pressure, diabetes screening, mental health counseling, smoking cessation.
So the first one I'm gonna give you is the hepatitis A. It's just gonna go into your shoulder, okay? Because you know I come here and party, so if anything goes wrong, you know where to find me, right?
A lot of people don't have health insurance. So we're offering these services for free. A lot of people don't have a primary care provider because they're afraid either to come out to their primary care provider or they've had negative experiences with their primary care provider. Well, here we're offering multiple services with gay-friendly healthcare providers.
At noon today, all medical students start freaking out because they find out where they're going to spend the next 4 to 5 years of their life doing residency. What happens is the administration of every medical school gets all the medical students together and you're given a letter. And on that letter is written where you've matched. It's called match day. And basically that means where you're going to work for the next 4 to 5 years, where you're going to do residency.
I've made it clear to everyone and their mother that I want to be at Jacoby. So the big question is whether my game plan worked and whether it's going to pan out.
Sanchez? Jacoby. Got my number 1. This is hot, Jacoby. So I'm really happy.
Oh, I'm so proud of you.
See, it says Jacoby.
Congratulations.
And then look, I got this.
You have worked very hard for this. Oh, this is beautiful.
My dream for the longest time was to become a doctor and work in the Bronx and really provide care for a community that I really love. And then I was like, what is my dream after that? Like, it's like, what's next? I don't think it's one dream. I think it's just having a lot of different dreams as time goes on.
I was 15 years old. I was only coming out to like my really close circle of friends at that point, and one of them I found out had told my brother, who was 17 years old. He was 2 years older than me. He was a senior, I was a sophomore, and he didn't say anything, so I confronted him one day, and I went into his room, and he said, "Close the door." And I was like, oh God, like I'm gonna get crap for this. Like he's gonna be really upset. He's gonna be really uncomfortable. And as soon as I closed the door, he said, "I am too. And I'm not gonna tell anyone yet." And he started going on about how he thought that sexuality was fluid and mutable, and he's going through puberty, so he has, things could change. He might end up being straight after all. Like he thinks there's still a chance for him, and there might be a chance for me too, so I shouldn't say anything yet because it would kill Mom and Dad, and we just gotta wait. And I was saying, no, like I know that I'm gay. Like I know it very concretely. And he didn't understand what I was saying, and I didn't understand what he was saying. But it was petrifying because I always thought that we're the only siblings. I thought that he would be the one to make my parents, you know, fulfilled as grandparents, and I would be let off the hook. And he was thinking the same thing about me. Lord knows why. But it was petrifying to have to carry his secret around while I was coming out.
This past January, we introduced viewers to 17-year-old high school student Emily Frerichs, who came out publicly to her small rural community in Iowa. Emily's story received such an overwhelming response from so many of you that we think it's appropriate, as part of our June Pride celebration, to salute this remarkable young woman again.
You've been listening to the Back to God Hour.
What is it that saves us is God's grace.
In Jesus, we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins in accordance with the riches of God's grace.
When I came out, people's initial responses were, "Are you a Christian?" And that really bothered me, because just because I was gay, people automatically assumed that I couldn't believe in God because I'm some sort of heathen or something like that. Dear Mom, this is hard for me, and I'm not sure I can bear the reaction I will receive when you read this. I apologize if this seems dramatic, but this is very difficult.
My hand can't even stay steady as I write this because I'm nervous. Hopefully I do not need to be. No matter what, remember that I am your daughter and always will be. I love you with everything that is in me.
No amount of prayer can change this, trust me. I've been doing so for the past 5 years, if not longer. It's a part of me and always will be, and my heart feels that this is now the time to accept it and be proud of who I am instead of hiding from everyone. Mom, I'm gay.
I understand that this may be something you will never accept, and that fact turns my head and my heart every single night and day.
Please don't hate me for being who I am, for I'm still your daughter and I love and respect you very much. If only I could describe how incredible it feels to let this secret be known to you, maybe then you will be happy for me that I'm finally myself. I love you very much, and that will never change. Your loving daughter, Emily Louise Frerichs.
She was very emotional, and she was crying and shaking. Her body was shaking from fear, from the cleansing, maybe, of it, just everything coming out. And she was scared.
I guess they're not gonna play. She was terrified. I'm sure she thought that we were gonna just kick her right out of the house, you know. Like just because, you know, the previous 15 years didn't count or something, you know. I mean, it doesn't change who she is. You know, she's still the same person. And she's got the same rights anybody else has.
I had a car accident 2 days before I came out. When it happened, I just thought to myself, you know, I almost died and nobody knows that I'm gay. I was just like, I have to tell everybody because nobody knows me. And I was terrified that I almost left this world and nobody really knew what I was about, and it really hurt me.
I'll never forget
started that day, walking through the hallways, hearing those whispers and feeling those sighs on me. Walking down the hallways the day that I came out at school and hearing all the whispers and just kind of all the anxiety I felt at that time just came out in piano. Why this feeling shouldn't generate music in my ears? I'm not too sure, not too sure.
Orange City, Iowa. A town of 5,000 tucked away in one of the most conservative corners of the American heartland. 12 churches sit at the center of this devout Christian community. Faith defines personal conduct. The Bible rules, and sin is scorned.
I'm not a real big church-going guy or anything like that, but I do believe in God and in the Bible and stuff, and it says in there it's wrong, so, and it's supposed to be like man and woman together is what it's supposed to be.
The biblical beliefs that I was brought up with, it says that it's a man and a woman who should be together in union, not a woman and a woman, not a man and a man. It should be a man and a woman, and that's a holy union.
I know of people that are homosexuals but don't practice it, and I respect that. Like the fact that they accept what they are, but they don't practice it. It's the practicing ones that I have a problem with.
As far as I'm concerned, they could put them all in the corner somewhere. That's my opinion.
Emily Frerichs challenged this rural community when she announced she was a lesbian at her high school. The first gay person to come out so publicly in the history of Orange City.
One time I was running. I was almost done and a car came by me and they kind of paused for a second and somebody screamed, "Lesbo!" And I kept running and I didn't say anything back. My heart raced and, you know, the car had started to slow down when they yelled it and I kind of wondered, are they gonna get out of their car and do something? And I started running a little bit faster because I was a little afraid. So I sprinted to the door and I slammed it shut and I ran to the bathroom and I started crying. I told my mom and she's like, maybe you shouldn't run at night anymore.
Late one night, as Emily and her family slept, someone crept into her driveway and vandalized her car. This crime was captured by a police photographer.
When I saw the graffiti on my car, my heart just sort of sank and I kind of felt sick to my stomach. Because, you know, I wondered why would somebody want to do that in the first place. I felt humiliated, like I was supposed to be disgusted with myself.
I felt shocked. This isn't, you know, this is why we live here, to be safe. Then I think anger came. You know, the mommy monster comes out, and who would want to hurt my baby like this? Who would want to do that?
My biggest fear is I'm gonna go somewhere and someone's gonna find out that I'm gay and they're gonna try to hurt me. And, you know, it's hard because you want to go everywhere and be proud of who you are, and it's hard to be proud when you're, you know, there's such great homophobia that exists and someone could lash out at you at any moment for absolutely no reason besides the fact that they're afraid of homosexuals, and I am terrified of that.
A college freshman was beaten, tied to a fence, and left for dead in Wyoming this week.
Emily and her close friends learn about the history of violence against gays through videotapes like the Laramie Project, which graphically depicts the brutal murder of Matthew Shepard, a 21-year-old gay man who lived in Wyoming.
People are killed because they are gay. What parent wouldn't have that fear? And if, you know, if I had a magic wand and could stop her and say, you're not gay anymore, would I do it? Maybe only because I would feel she's safer.
Coming out felt safer to Emily than living a lie that could be discovered at any moment. Even in her high school, among friends, a group of girls complained about having a lesbian in the locker room. The school responded by segregating Emily.
I can remember sitting in the locker room changing by myself and just bawling because I felt humiliated. And I felt like I wasn't being treated the same way. And, you know, I did that for 3 months.
I think the hardest thing, besides some of the taunting, is she lost friends who she thought were really close friends. She had some friends that she thought, you know, they're the stand by your side kind of friend that'll never let you down, and now they don't talk to her.
Emily fought back. She proposed a gay-straight alliance so the discussion of homosexuality itself could be brought out of the closet.
When I started the GSA, I had in mind that I wanted to be treated like everybody else. You know, when people look at straight kids, they don't go, oh, there's the straight kid.
The principal resisted the GSA at every turn.
The only reason that the principal could have objected is because of his personal beliefs, and he directly told me that several times, that he didn't believe that homosexuality was right, and he knew that other people's parents wouldn't believe it was right.
Despite the principal's effort to block Emily's group, in the end he had no choice. A federal law required that he allowed the GSA into the school. Emily's GSA now meets regularly at the high school, but the principal refused to allow In the Life to film there. So we asked Emily to convene an impromptu meeting at her home.
Gay students or students who are perceived to be gay aren't protected, and they don't even realize it. Because saying faggot or dyke isn't acceptable, and people have made it out to be acceptable. That's why there's so much violence and just like a negative perspective on us in the first place.
Right, because it's totally wrong, because
it's affiliated with being stupid.
Yeah, like gay and lesbian people aren't stupid.
Yeah.
This discussion is typical of the GSA meetings, yet even this appears to threaten the high school principal.
At every GSA meeting we hold at the school, the principal is in the back of the room taking notes. And it really makes me feel nervous and anxious, like I'm not supposed to be there. And he's watching my every move to see if I'm gonna slip. The worst comment that I heard was that we don't need a GSA, we don't need a club like this because people who come out deserve to be discriminated against. And I don't understand how anybody can honestly think that, because it's the same thing as saying you deserve to be discriminated against because you're black.
I was only once, when I first joined the GSA, someone called me a dyke to my face.
I get a lot of questions, like people just ask me like what it's like and stuff, and when you really think about it, it's silly almost that people think they have the right to say the stuff that they do. Most people that are straight or whatever, they haven't got half the guts that you do. And the only reason why they say the stuff that they do is because they're scared.
I look bad to begin with, and now this win.
Oh my gosh, yeah, your hair.
Emily, it's okay. It's corn.
Let me see that. It's gonna dead end for us somewhere? No. You go down, go through, go around, and go back up and around.
Okay, so what way do we want to go then?
So, hey, you're the leader.
Yeah. I don't want to be the leader in this. I'm gonna get us lost and we're all gonna die.
Just close your eyes.
Yep, go that way.
You know, once you reach this furthest.
I can see in your eyes everything we could be. I know that you believe in me. I've believed in God ever since I was little. You know, I've been raised as a Christian my entire life. My mother is a very devout Christian. I believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross for me and saved me from my sins, and that someday when I pass, then I'm going to spend eternity with him. And that's very comforting for me.
3 years ago, Emily combined her love of music with a passion for her faith when she joined the New Hope Evangelical Church.
This place will become like what the altars were to Abram.
This church is characterized by the fervor of its pastor and a strict interpretation of the Bible.
You're our healer, Lord. You're the one that brings healing. You're the one that just touches us with compassion, Lord. You're the one that lifts us up as your Spirit just moves inside of us. We give you the praise and the glory, Father. You are worthy.
Lord, we don't have in our own selves the ability to provide that healing that Bob mentioned, but we know how broken we all are. On Sunday morning, the most important preparation for me is to pray and ask God to show up, and that there would actually be the presence of God in this place.
The musical praise team on Sunday mornings is where Emily found her most inspired calling.
My heart would just like explode. You know, I love to sing in the first place, and when I'm up there and I'm singing for the God that I serve, it's just even more incredible. I think it's cool being a Christian, yeah. Definitely, I think the coolest part about being a Christian is the music. And I know God is able to deliver in time of storm, and I know that He'll keep you safe from all earthly harm. One day when my weary soul is at rest, I'm going home to be forever blessed. Trust and never doubt, Jesus will surely bring you out. He never failed me yet.
When Emily sings, you can tell it's coming from deep within her, that it's like her soul coming out. It's who Emily is. She pours it all out.
When New Hope discovered that Emily was gay, she was banished from the praise team.
Lord, we just pray that... When I was told that I couldn't sing on praise team anymore, I kind of felt like I couldn't be a part of the church anymore because they were taking those leadership positions away from me.
Those who lead in a role of leadership in our church, we want those people to be people that say, I'm a follower of Christ, and I'm really seeking to live out the commands of Scripture.
Oh, it broke her heart when, I mean, she was really into the youth group at church, and she really enjoyed a lot of the activities, and it was just like somebody turned a light switch. It changed that abruptly. In my mind, I think that's being a hypocrite.
Coming out definitely challenged my faith. You know, people were constantly badgering me, telling me that if I was a real Christian, then I couldn't be a lesbian because that's hypocrisy. And that made me really doubt some things, like why are people treating me this way, and why are they trying to tell me that I'm going to hell? And, you know, for a while I kind of felt like I was forsaken.
Hey. So you're taking the day off school today, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Emily met with her pastor to ask how she might reconcile her sexual orientation with her faith.
It's really hard to talk about homosexuality in my relationship with God because the Bible basically says you can't justify it through Him.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that I'm gay, and I know that's not going to change. But like wanting to understand my relationship with God and how that's interpreted through homosexuality has been a little bit confusing.
I think that one of the ways you're a good Bible student is you ask good questions. But what you have to keep doing, and what we're not doing now, is for both of us to have a Bible open, because it doesn't matter what I say. And then if I can say this lovingly, it doesn't matter what you say, it matters. Let's wrestle with what's the text say.
Yeah.
And if you were reading, starting with Genesis 1 and 2, God makes Eve especially for Adam. You know, He didn't make two men or two women, He made one of each, and then He brings them together and blesses that. Anytime the Bible addresses homosexuality in terms of, it always addresses behavior only.
Mm-hmm.
But it never affirms, it only says, this is not God's will, this is sin.
And what if I'm gay and I spent the rest of my life with another woman and we never had sex? Where does that place me? Because even if, honestly, I didn't do the behavior, is it still considered a sin if I'm gay and I never do it?
You know what you're saying. Really, from a Christian perspective, there's two good options. You know, one option, and this is probably the only one that seems possible at first, is to say, I have these feelings, and because of what God's Word says is I'm not going to act on these feelings. You know, in other words, celibacy, basically. Erotic, romantic relationship with the same gender is really not a Christian option. What if you could see battling, living out a homosexual lifestyle wasn't a battle that would give you less joy, but more joy?
I don't know. It's really hard to explain how I feel about it, because it's like, how am I supposed to fight a natural attraction that I have for the rest of my life? And, you know, I don't honestly think I could be happy if I tried to do that, and for that reason I don't think I will. But I'm gonna honor God with everything else that I do. But the main question that just burns in my head is just, you think, I don't know if I can honestly believe that God would condemn me for it, and I just don't. I guess I was just kind of curious on what your thoughts on that were.
Obviously, he's not meaning that we have to become perfect to go to heaven, because nobody is. But what he's saying is to really trust him means we're going to battle sin. I'm not to condemn someone, but God is the one who will decide, and he does warn us, apart from repentance. Jesus, I think it's Luke 13, he says, to all people, unless you too repent, you will all likewise perish.
God's not gonna accept me into heaven because of my sexual orientation and the fact that I choose to say that I'm gonna be gay for the rest of my life, and I don't believe it's a choice. And, you know, it's just, I hate that whole mentality that, you know, somebody's doing something, that they think that I'm doing something wrong. It's freezing.
Not too bad. It's not that. That's on the edge. I would like to tell this community that you helped me raise this daughter. You helped me raise my 5 children. I want this community to honor her faith and build her faith, not cut it down and tell her she's going to go to hell.
Emily was recently notified that she is the winner of a Matthew Shepard Scholarship, and she'll be attending the University of Iowa in the fall of 2006.
That morning, I decided that I would come out to my family. I had written my mother and sister a letter and my father a letter. I left my mother's and sister's letter on the answering machine and my father's letter on the toilet because I knew that they would both find them there. And I went off to work, and I had decided that, you know, this was going to be it. If they didn't, you know, accept me, then I didn't pack anything, which was, I think, a sign that maybe perhaps I knew more, I had more faith in them than I had, you know, I had the amount of faith in them that I should have. But I did have a lot of money with me, and I went to work, and by the time I got there, that drive over was the longest drive of my life, but by the time I got to work, my boss came out and he said, "Your mother called." And I was like, "Oh no." And he said, "And she said that she loves you anyway."
Actor and playwright Charles Busch has appeared as host of In the Life many times, but tonight he's the star of our next segment. When he began his career in the 1980s and realized that he was too unconventional for mainstream theater, Charles Busch wrote plays for himself and for a small troupe of actors. His gender-bending productions created an electric buzz right from the start, and they continue to challenge and delight audiences today. Filmmakers Charles Ignacio and John Catania share their insight into his genius with their new documentary, The Lady in Question is Charles Busch.
I love you, Gertie.
Oh, please don't.
I love you. From the first moment I met you.
I believe you. And the strange thing is, I feel the same. For the first time, something has burst inside me. And I feel what the poets call love. But do I trust it?
When you talk about Charles going from being a man to getting into drag on stage, he doesn't think of it as this huge transformation. To him, it's just another part of himself, and the drag helps him, look in a mirror and ready himself for the stage and go on with it. But it's very close. They're very close, those two personalities.
I'm sort of an elegant grande dame, perhaps a tad too aristocratic for my own good.
I wanted to make this film about Charles Busch because I really believe he's one of the great comic talents of our time. In his writing, in his timing, what he pulls off is extraordinary.
I suddenly have this urge to kiss you. I've never felt that way about another woman.
Then kiss me.
Charles took drag performance to another level. That's number one. He was an actor. Charles wrote plays which were taken seriously. They were campy without being just camp.
Oh dear. Does that make me a lesbian?
When John initially came to me and said, wouldn't it be great to tell Charles Busch's story as a documentary? Being the huge Charles Busch fan that I am, I actually kind of discouraged John from doing it because I thought we couldn't do it justice.
We went to Charles to say, can we do this story on you? And he was very flattered, of course, and said he'd love it.
You confuse me, sir. I've never met a man like you.
Who are you?
What I liked about his story was that he was really against all odds, because in the beginning he was trying to be an actor, and he was told no constantly. There wasn't really a place for him.
There was a period where I just was so bereft, trying to think, well, how will I fit in to the theater? How will there be a place for me?
Have you ever seen such an imaginative child?
The message that I was receiving was that I was too gay, too odd. It was just a devastating awakening for me, because all I wanted all my life was to be in the theater.
You are much younger than I expected.
I thought if nobody else was going to put me in a play, I'd have to write my own vehicle and somehow get it done myself. So I became a writer out of necessity, just to give myself the opportunity to act.
When I moved to New York, I hadn't come out yet as a gay person, and I was going to school on the Upper West Side learning to become a filmmaker. I was going to film school. And I think my boyfriend at the time dragged me down to the East Village and really introduced me to fringe theater. One of the things that I went to was Vampire Lesbians of Sodom.
Where am I?
It was cutting edge. It felt transgressive, like nothing I had ever seen before.
I dreamt that there was a lottery held to choose a sacrificial victim for the dreaded succubus. And I dreamt that I chose the black stone of death.
I got a phone call, and he said, I'm doing this little play in the East Village at the Limbo Lounge. He said, I know this really isn't your kind of thing, but would you just do it? He said, it'll just be for one weekend. He says, you don't wear too much, but, nobody will ever see it.
I wonder what this dream means.
That was no dream, that was the truth. You are the virgin sacrifice.
And I went down there, and he stapled me into like a leather diaper, it looked like, and I was going to be the centurion in Sodom.
It's just a silly thing we're doing for this one weekend. It's not like, I want to be a drag performer or anything, I'll probably never do it again.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. See our little play. If you'd like to know more about our activities of our so far unnamed theatrical company, we have a mailing list over in the back.
It wasn't until the third or fourth time we did it that we realized these weren't all our friends, that there were actually people we didn't know in the audience who were coming to see it.
It felt like a family, a troupe of players who just enjoyed being together. And I actually sat in the audience and I felt like I wanted to be part of that family. It was, and so I came back over and over again. I saw Vampire Lesbians multiple times. Then when he wrote and produced and performed Psycho Beach Party, I did the same. His Christmas show, Times Square Angel.
I figure I got me another 5 years in this dancing dodge. But the shelf life of a dame's good looks is shorter than a can of chili.
I first saw Charles Busch perform just after I stepped off the bus here in New York City. And I had never seen drag. I certainly had never seen drag like Charles Busch does drag. He was appealing to me because he made me laugh. And I thought his sense of humor was so on.
Helen, look at me. You're a drunk. Gifts, get on to yourself. Life's too rich to squander it on bitterness and booze.
You're right. It is rich.
When my parents would visit during the holidays, I would drag them to see Times Square Angel. I think that was a way for me to come out to them because I hadn't told them yet I was gay, and in retrospect, it was a funny way of me coming out.
What is the feminine for your word? That's what I am.
I always loved movies with an embattled heroine who, against all odds, survived. I also think, too, I was desperate to be a child star, and there was no one in my family willing to exploit me.
By the time Charles could walk and talk, the kid was putting on plays, writing and putting on plays.
He had his own world in his imagination. He was always in his room working on something creative.
The stories I wrote as a kid were these very romantic, opera-inspired stories.
We were living in Ardsley, New York, in a split-level home the moment my mother died. I actually can't even ask my brother certain things about how it was back then. It's that painful for me. I can't even ask him where he was.
My father reacted to the death of my mother by wanting to jump right away back into bachelorhood. He would go away.
My sister and brother and I have come to realize that my father had an inner age of 12 years old. Once we realized that, we all got along a lot better with him.
I think he really wanted to be a dad, but he just didn't know how to assume that responsibility.
The television became our babysitter right away.
The sisters were very important because so much of his inspiration for his writing is the large personalities in his life, and his sisters are wonderful and very important to telling the early part of his story, which was the loss of his mother.
After my mother died, there was no one to stop my brother from watching old movies until he dropped. From 3 o'clock when school got out, all the way to 3 o'clock in the morning.
Here's that eye-filling thrill show you've been waiting for.
What was going to become of Charles after my mother died? All he did was watch old movies. What was that going to do to a little boy's personality? What was it going to do to a little kid if he didn't know how many pennies are in a dollar? What anything was besides what was in an old movie.
Sir, I'm making my eggs and bacon, earning my pay, just by shaking this way, 4 shows a day.
When Charles's mother died, is to
living aunts, his mother's surviving sisters, Lillian and Belle, sort of jumped in to help take care of that family and hold it together. Lillian was exactly what Charles needed at that time, because he was not a good student and because he was living in a kind of psychic limbo, having lost his mother at age 7 and really not understanding what was going on in his life.
She had to make sure that he wasn't kicked out of school, that he could pass a test. Aunt Lillian had to give him survival skills. And that was a painful, painful battle.
There were a number of times when I really was teetering on the abyss. There was a point when I was 11 when I was so at a terrible crossroads. Had she not stepped in, it would have been disastrous, where I was flunking out of school and had lost any ability to concentrate.
Finally, all the movie watching for Charles caught up with him. Charles was poised to be left back in the 8th grade, and at the last second, just in the nick of time, Aunt Lillian whisked him to the High School of Music and Art. Saved that little bugger's life.
I think that Charles Busch discovered himself through his art. And I think that without having his artistic outlet, I shudder to think what would happen to him.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. I'm talking about 1930s movie premiere. So exciting.
The first day of shooting on this documentary was opening night of The Tale of the Allergist's Wife. Here is this East Village personality, playwright, performer, all of a sudden having a play produced on Broadway.
Tonight's opening night, I saw a little item in New York Magazine that said, "What a shock that this mainstream comedy was written by the author of Theodora, She-Bitch of Byzantium." My story at the moment is wacky East Village drag queen whose miracle of miracles has written this mainstream comedy. The truth is certainly more complicated. That I've been performing in a bar since 1984.
Rivki Dubau was a lesbian? She had 6 grandchildren and wore a hairnet.
Well, this was really the first time that I was kind of delving into my own Jewish background.
Marjorie, are you having a lesbian affair?
Oh, must you poison everything?
The main character, Marjorie, who Linda Lavin plays, has elements of both my sisters.
I think that my brother owes my sister millions for what she gave to the character of the allergist's wife, because you can't make that up. Everything that drives Marjorie crazy are things that drive Betsy crazy.
Oh, my God!
I have a tendency to call Charles and rant, and Charles is sort of my unpaid psychotherapist.
Everybody I meet, either knows me or I'm just introduced to me, it's congratulations. I've been around since Mary Pickford and doing this kind of offbeat career, and I guess I'm the last person some people think was going to have a Broadway show, although not to me. It seemed inevitable.
I got a phone call from my dad while I was up in college telling me that my mom had told him that the news, and I lived off campus with 2 women at the time. It was my first semester off campus, and I remember we had decided to stop studying and to smoke some pot. And we did some bong hits, and the phone rang, and it was my dad, and his voice was shaking, and he was, "Hi, Eddie. Your mom just told me something that I just can't believe is true." Now, mind you, I can't believe that they didn't know already. When I was 10 or 9, we were watching West Side Story on television, and when Tony got killed and Maria was crying over his body, I ran screaming from the room, ran to my bedroom, took to my bed, hysterically crying. I will never forget them trying to comfort me in my bed with smiles on their faces, which made me doubly upset. So I was angry at them for smiling and hysterical that Tony was dead. I could not believe Tony was dead. So how they couldn't have known I was gay, I don't know.
I'm Kate Clinton. For all of us at In the Life, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next month. Funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by the Ford Foundation, the Pride Foundation, Michael A. Lepin, and these funders. And the annual support of In the Life members like you.